Okay, so my presentation today is in part of my action research project for my master's, and we chose to do it on student behavior interventions and supports for Gateway. So last year, we noticed that for the 2018-2019 school year, there was concern for the amount of days missed by students. And so there were a total of 1,200 plus days, closer to 1,300 days missed by students, but depending on IEPs and case conferences, those dates vary. And my map, it shows that disrespect and defiance was the #1 trigger for discipline. Physical violence and fighting, and then as well as tobacco and drugs were kind of on par for the same. And then the smallest portion was truancy. For expulsions, we only had 3 students that were expelled for truancy, but that still counted for over 250 days of students being missed. So overall, there were quite a few days missed for less than 200 students, overall population for the school. Within some of the research and a book that we had been reading in our cohort, Darlene Hammond noted that teachers influence roughly 10% of any student's time. Therefore, most of a student's behavior attitude is influenced by health, attendance, home context, learning characteristics, colleagues, curriculum, and teaching conditions. Her book was more about teacher evaluation, but the parameters that influence student behavior is still relevant for my research. So I just did some background on what we do as a program at Gateway to help influence our students, which as a school we provide free breakfast, free reduced lunches, accountability, so the same thing as attendance, the home context, parent-teacher conferences, weekly reports, phone calls, things that we are doing generally on a daily basis. Within the classroom, so outside of the school, but more independent in the classroom, learning, so focusing on the student needs, making sure that the material is engaging, colleagues, placement of students who promote healthy learning, peer-to-peer relationships, so just making sure we have the relationships built, curriculum, make sure that it is on par for what we're trying to get our students to achieve. So APEX is generally the program, and that's where we saw a lot of our concerns for behavior-wise, is because online learning was not really conducive to student behavior. And then teaching conditions, so teacher-student interaction, growth mindset, safe. So are the students feeling safe? Are we encouraging growth mindset, or are we just encouraging fixed mindsets? My action research has 2 emphases. The first one is classroom interventions and supports, and then the second one is a points-based accountability for students. Both of these are going to be driven within the classroom, independent. So the classroom interventions and supports is going to be teacher-based, and then the accountability is going to be for our students to hold themselves accountable for their behavior. And so when I get into supports and interventions, we like to think, okay, are we getting an extra staff member, or are we getting extra funding for materials? That's not the purpose of this action research. Is primarily teacher and student driven. So foundations, the first one, when we talk about interventions, having the setting of the classroom conducive to student learning. So Catherine, you do flexible seating at times, so is that conducive to your student learning? Okay. Or Tracy and Gino, the way that you have your classroom set, is it conducive to student learning? It's not a right or wrong answer, but it's just what is right for our students. The next one would be routines and expectations. So we all have our routines and expectations, but the biggest thing is, do they know what they are? So we personally in the classroom know what they are, but do your students know what the routines and expectations are? Or do they come in following those routines and expectations? Okay. And then that's where we get into prevention and response. So those are the practices that are kind of go hand in hand. So supervision, opportunity, acknowledgement, and prompts and pre-connections. So those are the big things that we want to look at when prevention. So supervising our students. So if we know that a student is gonna behave at a certain time at lunch, then we're providing that supervision. And then the same thing for response. So error connections and other strategies, are we using the right strategies to correct that student behavior rather than just ridiculing that student or giving them a referral to go to the principal's office? Are we understanding why that behavior is occurring? The data systems for classroom interventions and supports, that's not important. That's for me just to collect data. Because again, the intention is to get student discipline down. So we won't get rid of it, but can we have less than 1,200 days missed by students? Any questions on that part? What any of it means? Okay. There's quite a bit there. I can hand out and give more references if need be for the classroom. So when we look into the student behavior log, which I will pass out now. So if you look at the classroom behavior log, well actually the supports and interventions were things that you should be doing as an effective teacher anyways to kind of regulate student behavior. This accountability log is to make sure students understand their behavior and the repercussions of it. So the 4 target areas that we're trying to emphasize is students shall be in their designated classroom at respective start times. Okay, and you can see that in that first row. Were they there? If they were, they get a point for the day. Second one, students demonstrate behavior that is conducive to student learning towards themselves. So again, if they had appropriate behavior, they would get a point. So the system is based off of earning points, so then they can understand, okay, I didn't earn a point for this period, and why. So if I say, okay, at the end of the day, I didn't follow all classroom rules and expectations, I would not get a point. And it helps further understand why, or kind of just gives me an idea of, I'm struggling with classroom procedures, but I'm doing pretty good at completing work. GLASU, 16% accountability, or 16% completion of classwork each week. That's the guideline we are using for APEX. Students should be finishing course every 6 weeks. And then number 4, students followed all classroom rules and procedures. So again, if they follow classroom rules and procedures, they get a point. Let me just go to the next slide. So with this, the whole point is just having the students hold themselves accountable. So each time, at the end of the day, they would fill out this log to determine, okay, did they earn a point for this specific period? The purpose of this is to hold themselves accountable, but then at the end of the week, the teacher can make comments as to the student's behavior, and then the intention is to take it home. So parents understand the child is holding themselves accountable, and the teachers themselves, you don't have to be consistently responding or talking with parents. This letter can go home at the end of the week, and they know how they're doing. Kind of as a dialogue between us, we're going to fill this out real quick. At the end of each week, they accumulate points, and so to encourage the appropriate behavior, we're going to cash in those points for rewards. So as a school, we're going to start implementing a 30-minute break at the end of the day. There will be a assigned teacher at the end of the day that would be in charge of holding a break down in the gym or wherever. Students can cash in for having food delivered for lunch, but if there are any other ideas for incentives that students can earn, we can write them down. Would anyone have any?
I think with food, you have to worry about allergies,
Okay.
but you can work around that certainly with food. All kids enjoy a snack.
Those who have earned points, you could do like a school-wide, like kickball game, basketball game.
Okay. School-wide recreational activity. I know one important, or one incentive that a lot of students liked last year was having their phone at lunch. So having their cell phone, cell phone during lunch. And these don't have to be set in stone, so if it doesn't work for one classroom, you can always cross one out. But the intention is to always have an incentive for the students to be able to cash in. Because that's kind of, we work for a paycheck, and at the end of the week when we get our paycheck, we go pay bills or buy things. Same concept holds to our students. We want them to work towards something. At the same time, intrinsically, we're trying to get down student behavior. Any questions on this whole concept? No?
No?
Okay, well, I will pass out some more, the reference, the handout or the log, we'll get copies to you. And then if you have any other questions about this, you can ask me.
Very good.